DBD is so killer-sided, Kaneki OP. DBD is so survivor-sided, bully squads are uncounterable. Both survivor players and killer players in DBD can easily say the other side is stronger. But with that being said, I think we can all agree on one thing: solo queue survivor sucks. If you were to ask me, this is exactly how I think the game feels, with solo queue survivor being at the bottom, and then trying to have fun and just playing casually as a killer. Then survivors on comms. Then above that would be a sweaty tryhard killer, and I think it's around the same strength as a sweaty tryhard Swift. But there's reasons why the game feels like this that everyone already knows, and it's the difference in strength between the strongest killers and the weakest killers is night and day. Also, the difference in strength between solo queue survivors and Swift survivors is also night and day. It's not even close. Even though I feel like a sweaty Swift and a sweaty killer is pretty much equal in strength, it usually comes down to what character the killer playing is using and how good the survivors can work together through communication. If you put the best killer player against the best survivor players, but the character that the killer player has to use is garbage, he's gonna lose. But if he can run tunneling, tryhard, double speed, blight, he's gonna have a huge chance of winning. And this is quite literally the system DBD has fallen very deep into. What would need to happen is stronger killers would have to get tuned down slightly, and the trash killers would need buffs or gameplay changes to make them more viable. Close the gap between the best killer and the weakest killer, effectively making every killer viable, but not so OP that people can get win streaks up to 1000. Literally fucking how, bro? I can't even get a win streak of like 15. Damn. But as I said, I think solo queue is arguably the hardest way to play this game. Like, how are my teammates going down in 3 seconds against a fucking legion? Like, some of the survivors in my games have to be hired to throw my games on purpose. Some people just go next because they don't like the killer we're facing. Like, there's been so many easily winnable games that have just been lost because a handful of survivor players are just babies. And I'm literally a survivor main to anyone who tries to call me a killer main, as if that's a bad thing anyways. But just like how it works for killer, it's obviously the same for survivor, where Swift is just so much more stronger than solo queue, it's laughable. There's been multiple times where the devs have tried to close this gap, like a few PTBs ago, where the strongest killers barely got a haste after unhooking since there was less tunneling, but the weaker killers got like 20% haste. This closes the gap between the strongest killers and the weakest killers. This is what we need. I still don't know how Nurse and Blight haven't been nerfed, but hey, it is what it is. And for survivors, the devs have also done some great things to close the gap in strength between Swift and solo queue, because the longer hook timers, anti-camp, base get borrowed time, and most importantly, the survivors objective HUD thing. I don't really remember what it's called, where you can see your teammates being chased, healing, doing gens, totems, how much they recovered on the ground, stuff like that. Really good changes that boost up solo queue, but due to the unreal amount of power creep in the game, this game is further making things stronger for Swift and the strongest killers, leaving solo queue to slightly fall behind. But there's one topic of discussion I've always been very interested in for the future of DBD, and that's whether or not voice chat can make DBD way better. I love including you guys in my videos, so I asked you guys this question a few times, and before I get into what you guys said, let me give you guys my take on this. First is, when I say voice chat in DBD, I don't mean proximity chat, I mean map-wide comms like any other game, when you're working with teammates and you're trying to win. First thing is, I think it would be very beneficial for solo queue, even if there's just a duo and you're able to get on the game's voice chat and tell your teammate, hey, me and you, we are on comms, we'll loop the killer, just do gens. I'm not good at looping, so I'm gonna do gens. I drop shack pallet at 5 gens. You know, that kind of stuff will make DBD much more easier to play at the very casual level, and make solo queue survivor less of a torture method. And there's obviously a few possible drawbacks to this kind of change to DBD, but you guys commented that, so I'll go over it later. I don't want to just repeat myself the whole video. So now that you guys know how I feel about voice chat being in DBD, let's go over what you guys think about this topic. I'm not an expert on the game, but from what I know, I feel voice chat would definitely give survivors an advantage and possibly make stealth killers less attractive to use. They would low-key have UAV and can tell other survivors if the killer's headed towards them, giving them more time to hide or move. And what will be the point of perks when you literally have people on comms telling you what's happening? I feel voice chat will definitely make DBD less scary and predictable, and overall not fun for killers. Certain perks would be useless, survivors can maneuver easily without being noticed, killers would be predictable. I might be wrong in overthinking, but I say leave it how it is. Yeah, leaving it how it is right now is ultimately definitely the safest play they could ever make. I don't think this is something you can really rush into DBD. But yeah, adding voice chat would just make so many survivor perks fucking useless, so yeah. One thing I do gotta say is, would adding voice chat really be too strong? Which in the grand scheme of things, yes, without a doubt. But every other game I play, there's voice chat, and people still don't use it. So would adding voice chat in DBD make those casual DBD players that pre-drop shack pallet at 5 gens really give good calls and even know what to calm? And would they even use it? Because people don't even use it in multiplayer games nowadays. So what makes DBD very much different? Those are just my questions, but this next comment pretty much sums everything up for me. DBD will never have voice chat, not in a million years. One of the core aspects of DBD is that you can't communicate with your your teammates, and you have to escape together. Adding voice chat would literally break the survivor role, and behavior would need to rework the entire game to the core. And since the game would be built around voice chat, people without mics, or that don't want to talk, or just casual players would have a horrible time. DBD would basically become even more competitive than it already is. Already game, by the way. And I replied, quote unquote, behavior would need to rework the game to the core. Could you elaborate on that? Because I can see how it makes survivors strong, but I don't think reworking the game to the core when survivors can already just hop on VC. So I feel like this wouldn't make the game so survivor-sided that the game would need to be reworked. It would just add a feature that people already use outside of the game. Give me some more feedback. And then he replied, the game is literally not made with the idea that players will communicate with each other via voice chat. When they created DBD, you couldn't even invite friends to your lobby to play pubs with them. Having voice chat gives you tons of information that you shouldn't be able to know. The perk Kindred, for example, would literally become useless since the hooked player can give you a call out where the killer is. With voice chat, you can 1. Save perk slots, 2. Make undetectable basically useless if another survivor sees the direction you're going in, 3. It would counter the following killers: Trapper, Hag, Huntress, Ghostface, Pig, etc. 4. Behavior doesn't want their game to become competitive. They want their game to be a party horror game that makes you feel as a helpless survivor, failing miserably at doing that, by the way. Yeah, I know. 5. It would just increase toxicity of the game. DBD is by far the most toxic video game. Saying this as a League player with 4,700 hours. PU, onion boy. Nah, I'm kidding. Adding VC would be adding oil to the fire, make the game even more toxic than it already is. 6. If they add VC, behavior would need to work on their game and buff multiple killers. They won't. Preach. I feel so bad for y'all Ghostface mains. 7. Adding voice chat will give them 2 choices. First option, balance the entire game around it. Like I said, VC gives you tons of information you shouldn't get, so they would need to compensate by nerfing survivors or buffing killers. Also, by balancing around VC, casual players, players with no mics, and people who don't want to talk and just play would have a horrible time. Second option, adding VC and not changing anything so survivors can get information they shouldn't be able to know for free, since the game is not built around the idea of players communicating in VC. 370 word comment, by the way. Damn, that was a long comment. Hold on, I need water after that. Everybody drink your water. And yeah, thank you for elaborating and going into more detail, and never feel bad for leaving a long comment, because the fact that you guys leave comments on my videos means the world to me. But yeah, pretty much everything you said I do agree with. I don't agree with Dead by Daylight being more toxic than League. Like, come on, it's League. But I'll take your word for it, because you have like damn near half a decade on the game. So I know it sounds like I'm throwing a jab, but it's all for fun. And yeah, thank you so much for going into detail. Yeah, I can definitely see how you might need to rework stuff, but for the people that don't want to use voice chat though, I don't think the game would need reworked, because I guarantee 70% of the player base still wouldn't use it if it was in the game. But yeah, the other 30% would probably be toxic as hell. So yeah, what you said makes sense. I agree. Proximity chat would be fire in DBD no matter what kind of advantage it might give. That's what I'm saying. I've been saying that voice chat would fix issues, yes, but it makes survivors stronger, but it gives behavior more wiggle room for stronger killers. Plus, people can actually teach new players the game in voice chat. That's another thing I was thinking about. Yes, there's a ton of toxic people in DBD, but there's also a lot of very nice people in the DBD community, and having VC to teach new players could be very, very beneficial. But that's a risk I'm not sure behavior is willing to take, and I don't blame them. Voice chat in DBD would buff survivors a lot, and nerf killers even more, but it might be a good addition if every killer gets a buff for it. But I also think survivors should have proximity chat. That's what I was thinking too. If adding voice chat doesn't affect blatant Kanki, which it wouldn't really change much at all, you already know where they're coming from a mile away due to their tear radius and their loud noises, but it would make Ghostface, Bubba, Doctor, and make those killers even worse, so they would have to be compensated and be way more interesting to play. I fear this could increase how often we see online harassment, misogyny, xenophobia, and racist insults in DBD compared to now in endgame chat. Yeah, the most obvious the most obvious reason is the amount of toxicity in this game would just make it even more toxic. So yeah, 100%. I'm not saying this is something that needs to be rushed into the game, but even though I like the idea of it, it's really gonna be rough to actually execute it in a game like this, where half of the fucking community are miserable. Adding voice chat to a game where both sides hate each other to the point of fake grooming allegations will be made because someone was tunneling and camping. What could go wrong? Yeah, I'm a little out of the loop on that, I guess, but like fake grooming allegations for a killer killing a survivor in a game where you're supposed to kill the survivor, or a killer making fake grooming allegations for a survivor because they were a bully squad. It's also that crazy. I plan on cutting that stutter out, but I might just keep that in. Like, not the whole community of DBD is toxic, but the toxic ones are really bad people. Like, genuinely terrible people to meet in real life. Miserable people. It would be hilarious if there was a modifier or a limited time game mode where the killer had proximity chat and could talk to nearby survivors. It would create some of the funniest moments, and it wouldn't even be that hard to implement. Just imagine the possibilities. It would definitely buff survivors, although I think it should be a proximity thing. Like, you shouldn't be able to hear your teammate across the map telling you where the killer is, but being able to catch up on what's happened throughout the match and tell them where things like totems are might be beneficial beneficial for solo queue. And obviously I grouped these up together. There's also a bunch more comments, but I'm trying to wrap this video up. But a big thing that you guys have mentioned and a lot of people on TikTok have mentioned is that proximity chat. And I think proximity chat could be very beneficial. Again, there's the caveats, the reasons of, you know, why there shouldn't be voice chat in DBD, and I'm all for that, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying DBD needs voice chat, because, you know, Discord exists, PlayStation parties exist. But here's the last comment. If DBD ever does voice chat, they need to put a hide and seek game mode where killers lose scratch marks and have to actually hunt. Maybe using the crows and the trout to locate survivors. Survivors should have another objective where communication with the other survivors is necessary, and they don't have a tear radius until they are actually being chased. But of course, the killer can hear them talk and talk back to them. Similar to Friday the 13th, make DBD scary again. Now survivors are the bullies. And obviously this is back to what a bunch of you guys recommended, is a game mode with proximity chat could be really beneficial for DBD. It could be really fun. Imagine the clip farming I could do with that. And I think it would be a decent way to try to slightly introduce proximity chat into DBD or some type of chat. At the end of the day, me wanting to add voice chat, it mainly just helps the lowest form of survivors, which is solo queue. Because if you're going against a Swift, they're already on comms, so they don't really need aura perks. And if they're a sweaty tryhard Swift, then they're not using any aura perks because their callouts are going to be on point. They're going to know all the callouts. They're going to be like Hens, where they have the clock system and like they literally, yo, I'm 1 o'clock on the map. Like that shit is crazy. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, that's all I'm gonna go over in this video. Do you guys think a proximity chat kind of game mode in DBD could end up saving the game? Well, obviously not saving the game. There's too many toxic people in this game. But imagine the clip farming that Dead by Daylight could have. But yeah, I'm gonna stop procrastinating. I'm trying to end the video now. So let me know what you guys think about chat, voice chat in DBD. Maybe just proximity chat, maybe a game mode for it. Right now, obviously, it's safe to say that it's not happening, because as the big comment said earlier, Dead by Daylight was never designed. It was all based on the fact that you had to survive and you had no communication. You had to work as a team without communicating. I just think it would be fair for the solo queue survivors, especially because I play solo queue survivors a lot. But yeah, I'm not trying to make the game like super survivor sided. I think some things need nerfed, like background player needs to get the fuck out of the game. I'm gonna stop procrastinating, end of the video. Let me know what you guys think. Other than that, hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you have a good day.
It started when we were younger.